Hello again. Welcome back to our 12th chapter series on lectures on water management, the Israeli experience. My name is Yoram Morad. I'm the Special Envoy for the International Water Affairs at Mashav. As some of you already know, Israel, a semi-arid country, has managed in the last decade to solve its acute water challenge. The secret lies in a holistic, integrative approach to the subject. A lot of challenges to confront, and none of them can be neglected. We already spoke about the important role of wash and water management in difficult times, relating, of course, to the corona crisis we are all confronting. We also learned about water management in agriculture, education regarding ways to reduce water consumption, water harvesting, disruptive and sustainable water technologies, urban water loss reduction, water quality preservation and remediation, and water purification and reclamation. The future lectures, we have only two more in addition to the one of today, that will take place every Tuesday at 12 o'clock GMT, 3 o'clock Israeli time. We'll discuss national and urban water management, and last but not least, innovation and water tech. Today, we have the honor to host Mr. Abraham Tenne, former head of Desalination Division, Israel Water Authority, and chairman of the Water Desalination Administration. Mr. Tenne will talk about closing the gap, the Israeli story of desalination. But before giving him the floor, a few technicalities with your permission. One, the lecture is recorded. Two, it will be uploaded to the YouTube channel of Mashav MATC and will be available there together with the recordings of our former lectures. It is also available now and later on Facebook Live. Look for the page of Mashav MATC. Questions, please write them down here on the chat option addressed to everyone. Mr. Tenne will answer them at the end of the lecture. The lectures are a joint venture of Mashav MATC, our training center, and this is a good time to thank Alina Doncic and Ora Rabin for the hard work they invest in this program, and Mashav, Israel's International Aid Agency. Please join us for a 100-second clip on Mashav, hoping that I will be able to activate it, of course. And after that, I promise the lecture.
Mashav, Israel's Agency for International Development Cooperation, was launched 60 years ago to share the know-how and technologies which provided the basis for Israel's own rapid development. Mashav aims to empower those living in poverty in a holistic and innovative way and support fellow nations and communities in their struggle to achieve sustainable development, placing people at the heart of its initiatives. Our agricultural programs use unique techniques and farming methods to increase sustainability, food security, and hunger eradication. We believe that investment in education is an investment in our future and an agent for change around the world. We coordinate Israel's official humanitarian assistance, building medical facilities and supplying medicine in the wake of earthquakes, floods, famine, and other disasters. Mashav promotes innovative entrepreneurship as a means of advancing growth and prosperity. We believe that gender equality and women's empowerment are central to reach sustainable development. Our philosophy is to leave no one behind. During 6 decades, Mashav has trained over 300,000 people from more than 140 countries and has established development projects worldwide. Mashav, Israel's Agency for International Development Cooperation, is celebrating 60 years of sharing its experience and partnering for a better world.
Okay, Abraham, are you ready?
Yeah,
Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, I would like to thank Yoram Murad from Ashab for giving me the opportunity to tell you of what we achieved to do in Israel in closing the gap between the demand of water and the water resources. I worked for the Israeli Water Authority, which is part of the Israeli government as an independent authority that is responsible on all the water issues in Israel. This authority was established in 2007. It means only 13 years ago. And one of the first things that the Water Authority decided is, what is the goal? Where do we want to be with our water sector? And you can see it in few words. We want to assure that water will be sustainable, available, reliable in the required quantities, locations, and qualities, and I will add to that, in the right economic prices. So this is the goal, and it means that we want to assure that we will not depend anymore only on the natural resources, but we will be able to cope with water shortages whenever and whatever takes to do, and give each and every person and purpose the amount of water it needed. Now, what is the problem in Israel? You can see our demand forecast, and what you see here, a table until 2020, we have the same table until 2050. That means we have it another 30, 40 years ahead to know where we are going to be. And you can see that agriculture is taking about 50% of the water demand in Israel. Industry is taking about 5%, that means about 100 and something million cubic meter per year. The urban cities, villages, this is the one who is growing all the time. And remind you that the growth of population in Israel is almost 2% a year, one of the largest growth of population in the developed world. Then we want also to rehabilitate our aquifers. We want to keep our aquifers with the right elevation, with the right amount of water in them. We are also supplying our neighbors with water. We are supplying the Palestinians in Jordan with water. We want also to keep some water to the nature. We want to have some water in our rivers. So altogether, you can see that in the year 2020, this year, we have about 2.4 billion cubic meter per year of water demand, with all the different sources and qualities of water. Now, the problem lies in this table. The average amount of precipitation and the average amount of water that goes into our aquifers and the Sea of Galilee is a little bit less than 1.2 billion cubic meter. So in an average year, we have a gap of about 1.2 billion cubic meter per year that we need to find a way to bring this amount of water to cope with the gap between the demanded resources. So what are we doing? We are doing several things. I will touch each and every one of them, but mainly what we are doing, we are dealing with education and some other stuff of water saving. We are reusing our water, and we are producing new means of water. So what we are doing, if we are looking into water reuse, in 2020, we are reusing today about 550 million cubic meter per year. We have desalination, which is giving us another altogether brackish desalination and seawater desalination, almost 650 million cubic meter per year, 650 and 550. Here you can see how we close the gap between the demand and the resources. But again, this is a picture of the present. In the future, the gap is only growing because growth of population is growing, the demand of water is growing the same thing, and at the second end, the amount of natural resources is going down because of the climate change and because of many long-term modules of precipitation in the world. We can see that in our region, in 2050, we will have about 15% less precipitation than what we have today. It means the amount of natural resources is going down, the demand is going up, and the gap is only growing all the time. So how are we coping with this? In the past, we had a wonderful solution when Moses, our leader, took the Israeli people from Egypt to Israel about 3,000 years ago. He had a wonderful thing. He had a stick. Whenever we need water, he just hit the rock and he got water everywhere. And it's no energy, no environmental problems, wonderful solution. The big problem is that we don't have the stick anymore. And today, in order to produce desalinated water, we need to use a very sophisticated technology, a very costly technology, in order to be able to produce water from brackish water or from the sea. Now, what are we doing? We are doing three things in parallel. The first thing is saving water, and I will touch different kinds of water saving that we are doing in Israel. The second thing, we are reusing water. We are taking our municipal wastewater and using them as a water resource. And this water resource is a constant resource. We have it all year long, and it's only growing with the growth of population. And the third thing that we are doing is desalination. It means producing new means of water from resources that you cannot use directly, and you need to do all kinds of purification in order to get the molecules of water that we need. So going into the water saving, there are several things that we are doing in this matter. One thing is publications, all kinds of PR, all kinds of promotions in TV, radio, newspapers. This is a thing that we are doing all the time, letting our people know that we will always have a shortage of water and we need to save water all the time. The second thing that we are doing, we are teaching the children in our schools. We start with our kindergarten children, elementary school children, but we are doing also a lot of work with our students. It means all the pupils in Israel are getting a kind of a brainwashing on the water issue, trying to teach them really to save water. And we call these young children, the kindergarten and elementary school children, we call them our water police. They are teaching their parents how to save water, to close the tap when we are shaving, when we are brushing our teeth. This is part of the way we are growing up in Israel. Another thing to do is fighting against water leakage in pipes. Water leakage is a huge problem all over the world. In many cities, in the big cities in the world, there is a huge leakage of water from these old pipes. There is a problem to find where the leakage is. There is a problem to repair the leakage, and a lot of water is wasted through these leakages. And whenever we can deal with these leakages and treat them and maintain our piping system, we will save water. Just what we succeeded in Israel in the last 10 years, we succeeded to go down with water leakage from 15% to 10%. It means we saved 5% of water leakage in pipes in Israel. 5% of 2.4 billion cubic meter per year. It means we have here a saving of more than 100 million cubic meter every year. It means we saved building a new desalination plant only by dealing with the water leakage and pipes, and this is usually much cheaper than to desalinate water. So water leakage and pipes is very important, and this is something that should be done everywhere. Just to give you examples, in Israel, we are now in about 10%, an average of Israel, 10% of water leakage. But if you take our neighbors, you take Amman, the capital of Jordan, or you take Damascus, or you take Beirut, all of them, the water leakage is about 50%. You take Mumbai and New Delhi, about 50%. But you take London. London today, the leakage there is about 35%. So not only in developing countries, but also in developed countries, this is a big problem that should be faced. Then looking into irrigation systems. Agriculture irrigation is using at least 50% of a country's water demand. In Israel, it's about 50%. When we are going to Egypt, it's almost 90%. You're going to California, it's about 70–75%. Irrigation in agriculture is very important. Whenever you can go up to more developed irrigation systems, you will save water. If you take the farmers in Egypt, but also in California or in Arizona, you will see that they are using mainly flood irrigation, open channels and flooding the fields, and this is the way they irrigate. In very dry areas with low humidity, it means a very high level of evaporation. If you are able to go to drip irrigation, you will be able to save about 40–50% of water that are now going into the plantation and not into the air by evaporation. So drip irrigation is very, very important. But then, not only that, if you go on and we want to develop all kinds of plantation that needs less water. So all these kind of things that should be done. And the last thing is the price of water. The price of water is a very strong regulatory tool that we use in order to save water. Whenever you go more and more to the real price of water, people will save more water. When you pay nothing for water, nobody will save the water. So the price of water is also very important, and try to keep the price of water as close to the real price and as less subsidy of the water. So all of that was on water saving. Now, just trying to see. Just a second. Okay, now when we are talking about saving water, this is part of a promotion that we did in Israel. We saw beautiful ladies that are drying down, and it was a very strong promotion at the time. Another thing that I would like to recommend, if anybody wants to learn about the water in Israel, Seth Siegel wrote a wonderful book on the water in Israel. Recommend to read it, and it will give you a lot of information what can be done in this matter. Now you can see also what people are doing when they are trying to learn about how to save water. You can see here irrigation system. This is old irrigation, that the irrigation pipes are above the level, the ground level. Today, all these pipes are below the level and no evaporation at all in these systems. And you can see another system of collecting water during the night into the field itself. The way that we try to define the leakage in pipes, there are very interesting technologies, part of them developed by Israeli companies in order to define the leakage immediately when it happens. It means that you are able to correct, to maintain the piping system immediately when you have a leakage and save a huge amount of water. And about the water tariff, this is a very important thing. And what is important with the water tariffs, in Israel, we are using two levels of water tariff. We are using a lower level for the poor people that cannot afford too much to pay for the water, and we are using a higher level for the people that have more than enough money in order to pay for the water. So all the matter of the water tariff is, again, very important about it. And the prices in Israel goes between today is about $2 per cubic meter, up to $3 per cubic meter, and the agriculture are paying for their reused water about $0.4, $0.5 per cubic meter. Now, going into water reuse. Water reuse is very important in Israel. We started with it about almost 30, 40 years ago, when we understood that we are not going to have enough natural water for our purposes. And in the other end, we do have municipal wastewater that we can use. So we started to treat the wastewater and reuse them into our agriculture. And this started with an amount of about 100 million cubic meter about 30, 40 years ago. And today we are reusing about 86% of our wastewater, and it's about 550 million cubic meter per year. And this is going to grow. I'll show you in a minute. And you can see here you can see our central wastewater treatment plant in all the Tel Aviv area that is treating waste of about more than 2 million people. All the wastewater goes with 3 pipes into the northern part of our Israeli desert for agriculture. Now, in this slide is all the story of the water in Israel, the water management in Israel. You can see until the 90s of last century, we were using only natural potable water. You can see the white color, only natural potable water. And then we started to reuse water. This is the red one. And we started to use brackish, salty water directly for all kind of plantation in the southern part of Israel. And we are using this salty, direct irrigated water even today, and it's going to continue. We have very interesting agriculture based on salty water. But the main thing is going more and more into water reuse. And in the beginning of the year 2000, we started to desalinate water. So you see, we are going down all the time with natural water that we are using, and the amount is going down, as I told you, because of our long-term forecast of precipitation in Israel. And in the other end, we are going into higher amounts of reused water and higher amounts of desalination. So if you take, for example, the year of 2010, 10 years ago, we had about 14% of desalinated water, about 20% of reused water, and about 60% were natural water. Today, we have about, in 2020, we have about 35% of desalinated water, about 30% of reused water, and only the rest is natural resources. And if you go to 2050, 30 years from now, you can see that the amount of natural water is going to be the lowest number. It's going to be less than 30% of the amount of water that we are going to use in Israel. And 40% is going to be desalinated water, and 20% is going to be reused water. So you can see that the amount of natural water is really going to be the lowest number, and the water sector is going to be based more and more on what we call, in a way, artificial water that we are using in Israel. This is where we are, and this is where we are going. It means we will need in the future to build more and more desalination plants. We'll need to treat more and more effluent in order to be able to deal with this interesting phenomena of closing the gap between the demand and the resources. Now, by being a country that has a huge deficit of water, we also developed very interesting technology in Israel. I'll not go too much into it, but if you are looking into water saving systems, water leakage detections, water security, which is very important, smart cities, and national water management, a lot of technology like this, we do it in Israeli companies, and they will be more than willing to assist each and every one of you with this matter. Now, after we talked about water saving, we talked about water reuse, we are going now to deal with the last part of the presentation, which is producing new means of water, and it's called desalination. And desalination in Israel, we are based ourselves on two resources. One is brackish water or aquifer water that we have, underground water, salty water that we cannot use directly, and we need to desalinate it to take out the salt from the molecules of water. And the main resource is seawater, and the desalination of seawater is our main resource of desalination in Israel. To do that, to be able to desalinate water, we need to have a program, a national program that will let us keep land for new developments of desalination plants into the future. And we do have a master plan, we do have a national master plan. The old one was a master plan that allowed us to desalinate up to almost 800 million cubic meter per year. We just a few years ago finalized a new master plan that allows us to desalinate more than 2 billion cubic meter per year. It means allocate new places for new desalination plants. So this is a very important thing that we need to have in each and every country that goes into desalination, to define the places that you want to have desalination in the future. I will just say one word. The price of desalination in the world is going down. And if in the past, if let's say 20 years ago, the price of desalination was about $2 per cubic meter, we succeeded now in Israel to reach numbers of almost 50 cents, almost $0.50 per cubic meter of desalinated water. And it means that we are now very close to the price of just producing natural water. So it means that desalination is not as expensive as it used to be, and we can deal with it, and we can allow ourselves to have desalination in most of the countries in the world now. So this is very important to know. And just a word on the quality, which is also very important. The desalinated water is bringing into the natural water grid very pure water, much less chlorides, much less all kinds of elements that are not so good for our health. And the water is also very clean and very pure. So if you're talking about turbidity, which means it's the purity of the water, you can see that if the WHO allows us to go up to almost 1 NTU, 1 unit of purity, from the desalination plants we are going to, with numbers that are 0.1, 0.2 units of purity. It means the water is much clearer, much less salts in it, and it's also good later on for the water reuse, because the reused water is also going to our field. So take into consideration the quality of water that we are getting from desalination. Now, How did the desalination in Israel develop during the years? Until 2004, we had only a very small desalination plant in the southern part of Israel, a place called Eilat, a plant that was producing about 3 million cubic meter per year of seawater desalination and another 10, 11 million cubic meter per year of brackish water. That was all we had in Israel at that time. In 2005, we started to operate our first large-scale plant in the Ashkelon area. Ashkelon is, by the way, very close to Gaza Strip, and we have there a very unusual situation. We are supplying water to Gaza Strip, we are getting rockets from them. Part of the rockets hit also the desalination plant that is producing water for the people of Gaza. A very strange situation, but still, in Ashkelon, we started with our first large-scale desalination plant. At that time, when it started in 2005, it was a plant of 100 million cubic meter per year. All these plants are produced with the technology of reverse osmosis or membranes. I'll say in a minute a word about it. And the Ashkelon plant was at that time, in 2005, was the largest reverse osmosis plant in the world. Today, the Ashkelon plant is producing 120 million cubic meter per year. Then in 2007, we had the Ashkelon plant working as a 100 million cubic meter per year. And in addition, a new plant, the Palmachim plant, started to operate as a plant of 30 million cubic meter per year. Later on, it grew up to numbers that are higher. I'll talk about that a little bit later. In 2009, we started to operate the Hadera plant, which was a plant of 130 million cubic meter per year. And this plant at that time was the largest reverse osmosis plant in the world. Then in 2011-12, we started to operate the Soret plant, which is a plant of about 200 million cubic meter per year. And about 150 million cubic meter per year. And this was at the time the largest reverse osmosis plant in the world. And today we are going to start to build a new desalination plant, which is going to be a 200 million cubic meter per year. And this is going to be really the largest one. So starting with 2004, where we started with the large scale desalination, until today, we started with almost zero. We are now desalinating almost 600 million cubic meter per year of seawater desalination. And if you add to that another 70 million, 80 million of brackish water desalination, we are reaching more than 650 million cubic meter of desalination. Now, just a word, as I promised you, about the technology. The reverse osmosis technology, which is called the new technology, is about 50 years old. It started with a professor, a Jewish professor. He started his research in California, Professor Sidney Loeb. He's really the father of this technology. He also gave the name of reverse osmosis to this technology. Professor Sidney Loeb came to Israel as a new immigrant in the late 60s, and I was fortunate to be one of his first students in Israel with this really new technology that today most of the desalination in the world is reverse osmosis, because this technology is cheaper than the thermal old technology that we have. Now, going back, after we desalinated the water, we need to send the water everywhere in Israel. So we do have a national grid. You can see these blue lines, and you can see like blood veins all over Israel. And it means that we can send water from each and every place to each and every place in Israel. You can see also some red lines, and this is all the piping system of the reused water in Israel. So we do have a huge system of natural and reused water piping system all over Israel. you need also energy. So in order to build and produce more desalination plants and more wastewater treatment plants, we need energy. And Israel is based most of its growing energy into the new and sustainable units. Part of it is using more and more natural gas units, going into solar energy. We just finished our third large-scale power plant in the desert of solar energy. We are going to build wind energy in Israel, much more than what we have. We do have what it's called pumped storage. I'm not going into it, but you can see most of the increase of energy in Israel is going to be sustainable means of energy. And just going on to the environment, of course, when you are building so many desalination plants, you need to keep the environment as happy as possible. So we need to bring down the influence of these plants on the environment. So we are doing many things in this matter in order really to be able to keep the environment and the environment people and the NGOs at least more happy than what we are today, and still be able to produce water. And just to show you the plants that we have today, you can see the Ashkelon plant. You have a plant that is producing today. It started as a 100 million cubic meter per year, producing today 120 million cubic meters a year. The water goes into a pond. It's a closed pond. The water is below the surface that you see here, and the water is pumped into the national grid. And about 5 kilometers from here to the south is the Gaza Strip. So this is Ashkelon plant, the first one. Ashkelon plant has its own power plant fired with natural gas. So it's an independent plant whatsoever. Then you have the Palmachim plant that started. Palmachim plant is about 15, 20 kilometers south of Tel Aviv. It started at a 30 million cubic meter per year. Today it's producing 90 million cubic meter per year. It tripled its capacity of desalination. The third one, the Hadera plant, you can see this is the plant, is producing today about 130 million cubic meter per year. And if it's needed to use its full capacity, it can go up to 140 or 145 million cubic meter per year of desalinated water. And the Sorek plant, which is today really the largest reverse osmosis plant in operation, is producing 150 million cubic meter per year. But if we need them to produce its full capacity, it can go up to 170 million cubic meter per year. And this is also about 20 kilometers south to Tel Aviv, about 2 kilometers from the Palmachim plant. And number 5 is the Ashdod plant, producing, started its operation in 2015, producing about 100 million cubic meter per year, about 30, 35 kilometers south to Tel Aviv. So these are the 5 large-scale desalination plants that we do have today. And we are now starting to build number 6, which is going to be next to the Sorek plant that I told you. And number 7 is going to go into a tendering procedure, let's say in about a year from now, in the northern part of Israel, a plant that's going to be 1 or 150 million cubic meter per year. As I told you, each and every few years, we will need to build a new desalination plant in Israel. So now, just a few words about our neighbors. So with our neighbors, we are doing several things. We are working on capacity building. We are supplying water to them. And we do have a very interesting project that today it's a little bit frozen, but I hope that it will continue as soon as possible, which is the Red Dead pilot project. And we are talking about a project that involves desalination and saving the Dead Sea. We are talking about a project that its first stage is going to be, it's going to be a desalination plant in the Jordanian part, but it's going to be a joint venture, Jordanian-Israeli plant. It's going to produce about 65 to 80 million cubic meter per year, the first stage. all the concentrate, all the reminings is going to the Dead Sea in order to start and getting the elevation of the Dead Sea a little bit higher. And the project, all the project at the end, it's going to desalinate almost 1 billion cubic meter per year in 20, 30 years from now. So this project, if it will continue, it will really save the water issues of Jordan and the Israeli southern part and the Palestinians altogether. Thank you very much.
Abraham, thank you very much. Even I, that nowadays can already say that I know a lot about water management in Israel. Even I found it very interesting with lots of information that I was not aware of. There is a question that I meant to ask, but instead we have Leon Cohen, who's with us, I think, not for the first time. Hello, Leon. Actually, Leon and myself would be happy if you'd be able to elaborate a little bit more regarding the coastal environment care addressed in desalination plants. I will add to his question a story about a desalination plant that was being built in Australia. I think it was I don't remember where, but it was inside a natural reserve. And what they did over there was, also thinking of the materials from which they build the plant, thinking of what's the best way to extract electricity over there without having a power plant next door. And what they even did was designing the plant in a way that it will go very well with the dunes of the area, including plants, the green plants on the roof, in a sense, so that really the energy consumption was minimized and the damage to the environment was minimized, etc. So if you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Okay, let's start with the environment. What we are doing before we start to build a desalination plant, before even we start with the statutorical, with the, let's say, with the permitting part of a plant, we start to monitor the sea itself. We monitor the seabed, we monitor the sea life, we monitor the water for about 2 or 3 years before starting anything with the desalination plant, just to get the basis of what is the situation, what is the natural situation of the sea. Then during operation, we are sending out twice a year, in the autumn and in the spring, we are sending out a ship that takes samples of each and every part of what I said, the seabed, the sea itself, and all the biology of the sea, and we are checking and monitoring exactly what's going on and do we see any changes. And what we succeeded to see in Israel, and by the way, it's not only in Israel, it goes almost over the world, you can see that you do sacrifice a small part of the sea. It means in a kind of a radius of about 400 or 500 meters from the place that you send the concentrate out, you can see that you have less plankton, for example. Big fish doesn't interfere, they don't care, but you see less plankton in a small area. Now this area of 500-meter radius is when you have a very calm sea, when no winds and no waves. When you do a wind and waves, the radius shrinks to about 200 to 300 meters. After that, you see that the concentration of the salt goes back to its natural concentration of the sea. So this is where we are. We are monitoring it for more than 15 years now. We didn't face any major problem yet in the sea. We don't want to say that it's going to be like that forever, but we do know that if you have a very good system of diffusers, you know where to send the streams of water, and you get the right treatment of the water that goes in and out, you can keep the environment in a quite safe place. Again, you are sacrificing a very small part of the sea, but take the advantages that you get by having water for the population. Because at the end, we can have a wonderful environment, but no population to enjoy it. So we need to find the golden path of it. And again, we are monitoring it all the time. This is part that the operator is doing each and every year. Each and every year, we have a report, a very long and detailed report on each and everything. It includes the sea, it includes the air, it includes the sea land, it includes the land itself, it includes everything to be sure that we don't harm the environment too much. Now we do harm the environment more during the construction of the plant, which takes us about 2 to 3 years to construct the plant. And at that time, we are doing whatever can be done in order to keep the environment as clean and as right as possible. And again, with the experience that we do have today, we know that we can very safe continue to desalinate the water and keep our water itself, which is the resource of water for us, but it's also a source for tourism and fishing or whatsoever. We can keep it in the right way. This is when we are talking about the environment, okay? Now you have to understand that there are many places. You just mentioned Australia. Australia, with these wonderful reefs that they have there, the price of water, of the desalinated water, went up to more than $2 per cubic meter. A big part of it is doing all kind of measures to keep the environment in a better shape, which didn't do anything to do it, but having a higher price of water. It goes the same in California, in Carlsbad, the price of water is more than $2. We have to be able to try and find the right way to keep the environment, not as an optimal environment, but to keep it in the right way that we can continue to desalinate water, but in a real price for the people to pay for the water. So this is something which is very important, the equilibrium between the environmental demand and the people willing and be able to pay for water. This is to talk about it, okay?
Okay, thank you. There's a question from Mehman asking actually regarding whether desalinated water can be used for drinking purposes, etc. So the easy way out is to say yes, but then maybe we can use this question in order to get maybe a short summary of the ways that we use desalinated water. What else except for drinking water do we do with them? How do they come together with the whole system? Do we mix desalinated water with natural water, etc.?
Okay, so first of all, let's say we are using desalinated water for everything, each and every purpose. It means this is water like all other water. But you have to understand, when we are desalinate the water, during the process of desalination, after going through the membranes, and we have several stages of membranes, I'm not going too much into details because you don't have time, but after going through the several stages of desalination, we are getting water without salt, like distilled water, water with no salts. Now you cannot drink this water, and you need to do something in order to bring this water to drinkable water. And this is why, in the end of the process, we have what we call the post-treatment, that we are adding calcium salts in the water. It means we are adding calcium to the water. It's good for our health because we need the calcium for our bone structure. It's good for agriculture. And of course, it's also stabilizing the water. So at the end of the process, after adding calcium salts to the water, we have drinking water with the best quality, and it goes into our national grid mixed with all our natural resources. Besides reused water, reused water is a different system. But with drinking water, we are taking the salinated water, mix it with all our resources, which is the Sea of Galilee and the aquifers, and use it everywhere for drinking water, for agriculture, for parking, and private irrigation, for industry. Everything is used with this water. It's just water like each and every other means of water, but much more cleaner. So by mixing the desalinated water, with the natural water, we are reducing the amount of salts we have in the water, and we're reducing the, let's say, the hazards that we do have in our natural water here and there several times. Now there is a debate. Do we or don't we need to add some other minerals to the drinking water, like magnesium or maybe iodine later on? This is something that is going on, let's say, discussion, and maybe in the future we will need to add some more minerals. But it's possible because the salinated water is industrial water. We can add whatever needed, it's just a matter of price. So this is, I hope, answers the question that I was asked.
Okay. There's another question from Jair del Castillo. I will use the question, and in a sense, I will ask it a bit differently than what he wrote over here. Regarding the prices, we know that desalination plants are quite expensive and they're big, and it takes time to build them. Can you tell us a little bit about smaller, cheaper ways of desalination that we know, which will, like, for example, if you have a community that is off-grid but close to the sea, let's say a community of 500, 1,000 people, what are the options that the world, that we, the Israeli technology, can offer them?
Okay, first of all, you have to know one phenomenon. As much as the plant of the desalination plant is larger, the price of water goes down. Larger plant, cheaper price. But we do have desalination plants even for one family. We have very small desalination plants. The price is not so cheap as in the large scale desalination, but it's affordable, because if you don't have water, you will pay anything for it. So we do have desalination plants, mainly in containerized desalination plants, that you can bring them in a container into a village, into a family yard, and desalinate water there. You need to have the resource of salty water. It means you need either to be near a sea, or you have aquifers with salty water that you can use, because you need the resource of the raw water to use. But then there are very small units that you can use everywhere, and it's all around the world. It means this is something that is ongoing systems. Now, there are some other technologies. There is the thermal technology. You can use, for example, solar energy, boil the water and get desalinated water. It's usually more expensive, but also we have units like that. It means there are units that have the solar energy. You have to understand that it can be used only during the day when you have the sun, but you can produce enough water that you will be able to use for all the day long. And we do have now all kind of researchers with all kind of new technologies, but all of them are now still in the, let's say, in the alpha stage of research, and this is not commercialized yet. But I hope that in the future we'll be able to go to plants that will be cheaper than what we know today.
Okay, one more question, and maybe we'll wrap up after that. If I understood correctly, the question is asking regarding any potential uses of byproducts that the desalination process produces. Probably, apparently, like, you know, using what's the name in English, or the botza, that is being left after you purify and
Okay, sludge. Butzah means sludge.
okay, sludge.
Butzah means sludge in English. In desalination, we don't have sludge, we have the concentrate. It means when you are going through the process of desalination, you are getting, let's say in seawater, you are getting about 50% is going to be concentrated water with much more salts. If you're talking about brackish water, the concentrate is going to be about 20% of it is going to be concentrated with salts. There are few technologies taking the concentrate and produce salts out of it, but it's very expensive. It's not economic to do it on a small scale. It's only economic if you're going to do it on large scale. And doing it on large scale, remember that the large scale desalination plants are near the sea. They're always in areas where the land is very expensive, and I'm not sure that people will be able to build another chemical plant to produce salts out of the concentrate. But there are all kinds of technologies in development in the world now, and people can be able to produce all kinds of salts out of the concentrate. Again, today it's not economic.
Okay, we just got another question that is asking for recommendations about brands that have been tested to work efficiently as small desalination plants for rural populations. I don't know. Until now, we didn't. We managed not to do PR for any certain specific company, but if you have like one or two in mind, why not?
What I suggest, because really we don't like to be a presenter of all these producers, but we do several of them in Israel, very good companies, and I suggest you, if the guy who asked this question will send you a mail, we will answer him. We'll give him a list of companies that he can talk with.
Okay, and I will add that we have two main sources of information that might be used. One is the Israel Export Institute. They have managed to concentrate lists of Israeli companies that deal with water issues, divided into categories. And the other one, which has even more information, is called Startup Nation Central Finder. Startup Nation Central Finder. It's a bit not as organized as what the Export Institute offers you, but if you ask the right questions, there are lots of there's lots of information that you can get from this one. And I think that this is it. All the rest of what we got is compliments and compliments and compliments. Excellent talk. Thanks a lot. I think that people are very, very polite, except for the fact that I agree with them. I think it was a very good talk. But you wanted to say something?
Yes, Yoram, just add another source of information is the Israeli Water Authority website, which has a huge amount of information in English. So it's very good if people would like to go into. It's called water.gov.il, and I think you will be able to find them a lot of information on water saving, on water reuse, on desalination, on water management. Very interesting to go into it and get some information out of it.
Okay, so thank you, Abraham. Thank you very much. Thank you all for staying with us. And we already, Alina already invited you in the chat, including the links. We'll be more than happy to have you also next week at the same day, at the same time. And our lecturer this time will be Diego Berger, Mr. Diego Berger from Mekorot. He's an excellent lecturer, if I may say. And I remind you that we have only 2 left, so be with us. I remind you again that you can find almost all the other lectures, the formal lectures, in the YouTube channel of Mashav MATC. And the most important thing is that we hope that this is only the beginning of your connection with us, with the Israeli water sector. And if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to write to Alina, to write to Mashad MATC, and they will answer if they can, or forward your question or request to the people that that can do that for you. So thank you very much, and hope to see you next week again. Bye.